Hi, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Today, I want to ask you a question. What is your biggest joy? What's your biggest joy? Can you think of something? What's your biggest joy? What is it that gets your energy coming up? Is it climbing a mountain? Is it maybe reading a book? Is it lying in the sun by the beach? What is it that's really getting your energy bubbling up there? What would you say? I want you to take a moment to think about that. Do you have something? Many people find it hard, but don't think about it too much. Just think about what you would like to be doing at this moment. Okay, that's a good clue. Let's say it's climbing a mountain. Okay, let's say you're a mountaineer. I'm not. I love radio. The thing that gets my energy going is sitting, turning the button, trying to tune in that radio station from somewhere in the world. That's what really gets me excited. Let's imagine that your thing is mountaineering. You love climbing that mountain. Now let's just compare that for a moment to learning English. You come to an English class and you feel a little bit strange because you're thinking, you know what? I would rather be climbing that mountain, but here I am studying the conditionals. Really? Well, and then you think, well, I've got to do this because Teacher Joseph, he's going to ask, because I ask in every lesson, what have you been doing with your English? It's my first question because I want to know that you've been doing something. And so you're thinking, oh, I need to have something ready for Teacher Joseph. He gave me an essay. He's going to ask me what I've been doing. And the truth is, I haven't been doing much because it's not in my list of passions. It's not up there, or you just don't have time to do it. Okay. We spoke the other day why English isn't there as your list of passions, but today I just want to focus on the thing that you are passionate about. So just picture that in your mind and then picture the English lesson. The thing that you're passionate about is the thing which brings you energy to talk. Now, that's a very different thing from an English lesson where the teacher says, okay, today let's talk about the moon and astronauts and Neil Armstrong and Buzz, I don't know what his name was, Buzz Aldrin, was it? The second astronaut who went to the moon. So you have this conflict. You have the you, who's you, happily climbing mountains, and then you have the you who's at an English lesson talking about the moon, and you're thinking, I don't really, I don't really find this very exciting, but I know I have to do it because it's English and because the teacher, he gave it to me to do. So that means it's important. Now, there's two things wrong with that. Okay. First one, we're not at school anymore. When we're at school, we are told we have no choice because we have to be disciplined. When I was at school, for the first 6 years of my life, I thought my name was Don't Touch That or Face the Front. And it was such a harsh, horrible experience that I really didn't want to learn. Now, you're in an English class. This is moving on, let's say 20, 30, maybe even 40 years. You're in an English class, and this time you're paying for the class. And the teacher is saying, let's talk about the moon. And you're thinking, let's not. I'd rather be up my mountain, thank you. You're paying for that suffering. Do you see how weird that is? It's a bit of an odd thing. We've all been there. Part of the reason is because we're afraid to tell the teacher how we feel. And secondly, because we don't know how to manage ourselves. We don't know how to train ourselves to learn, which is why we go to a teacher. Now, some teachers, they'll have a grammar book ready, they'll have bits of grammar, they'll have a story to tell you, they'll have everything. And it can be quite entertaining, maybe a little bit useful, but it's very unlikely to hook directly into your passion. And if it does hook directly into your passion, it's because the teacher has been asking you about your hobbies and pastimes. But the teacher doesn't think he's going to teach you about your hobbies and pastimes. The teacher is thinking, okay, yeah, we've done hobbies and pastimes, so let's move on to talk about the moon. And you're thinking, oh, well, actually, it sounds a bit dull, but you don't tell the teacher. So here we have situations where, number one, you're paying for an English lesson, but you're not getting out of it what you could. Number two, you're in an English lesson feeling bored. Okay, because you're not getting out of it what you could. And of course, number three, your mind is drifting away to that mountain that you'd rather be on. And there's part of your mind which is saying, wow, it's an English lesson. I have to do this, so let's just get it done. It doesn't have to be like that. Now, I know what you're probably saying. You're probably saying, wow, you know what, Teacher Joseph, an English lesson can't be fun. Oh no, it's not supposed to be like that. It's not about me to talk about my hobby. It's about me to talk about my very boring job, or about me to talk about the reason why I really need English. The greatest, most successful kind of lesson that you can do for yourself alone at home is when you take your passion and you turn that into something creative and you give that to your teacher. Now, you might have tried that already, and the teacher doesn't look too excited about mountaineering. The teacher is, kind of, oh yeah, mountaineering, okay, let's go through this. But that's not important. What is important is the fact that that essay has been created by something you're passionate about. That is what the driving force into English is. Now, this is a little bit more complex than simply learning English, because many of us in our lives, we're doing jobs that maybe we know we could do better if the boss allowed us. We also know that we could, in theory, work for ourselves, but it's too complex and we wouldn't have much money and everything else. And so we're in this place where we're kind of sad. And then on top of that, we have family issues, maybe an unhappy relationship and everything else. And it all just looks horrible. What if you could just forget about everything and go and climb that mountain today? What would that look like? Can you feel the energy coming up there, bubbling? I'm just thinking, what if I wasn't sitting here on YouTube? What if I was with my radio, turning the dials? And now I'm thinking, what would make me really happy? For me to go and get my radio and to do a YouTube clip, me showing you turning the dial. That'd be lovely, wouldn't it? I can feel really refreshed by that. In fact, it makes me feel really joyful. Who knows? Maybe I'll do it in one of our next clips. But my point is this, that energy that you feel coming up is really something you need to be focusing on when you're learning. Because you and I both know what it's like. You get a teacher, and the teacher says, learn these 10 new words. And you think, oh, these 10 new words are about, let's say, farming. And you think, I tried to learn these new words and I couldn't. So you go back next week to the teacher says, okay, did you learn those words? And you say, yes. And the teacher says, okay, give me sentences. And you say, okay, yeah. And then you never learn them again. It's the same when you're at school. Do you remember the teacher used to ask us to memorize poetry? And then at the end of the class, of course, you'd forgotten everything. And by next week, it had gone completely. You would go back to the class. If you were lucky, you managed to spit out a few words, but you couldn't remember anything. It's a bit like that. But if you take away the framework, take away, let's say, that poem, for example. Let's forget about memorizing it. But if you talk about it, put it into different words, ask people what it means to you, even for you just to say you don't like it, that you don't like poetry, it has much more meaning because you learn more about yourself. Now, with this thing that's bubbling up with energy inside, it's a marvelous thing because what that does is it shows you where your passion is, where your natural gift is, where your skills really lie. And it can teach you a lot about yourself. And if you use it, it can also teach you a lot about English, not just because you're learning the words of that thing that you like to do, but that thing itself probably has some skills that you can bring to the English class. For example, if you like, let's go back to this idea of climbing, yeah? And you want to relive that experience of climbing, start to write a journal about climbing. Start to write a blog about climbing, or even just an essay for the teacher. If you're looking for a new job and they ask you what was your greatest failure, you could say, well, it was a time I was carrying out my passion, mountaineering. I fell, I broke both my legs, but it taught me to rely on other people more, and that made me a better climber. So whatever your passion is today, there's skills there, things you can learn about yourself that you can bring to the table of English, not only about the words, but also how you like to learn. If mountaineering is your thing and the energy is up, maybe that's the time to be hearing podcasts. Maybe that's the time to be listening, or maybe even just to listen to English podcasts about mountaineering, to hear other people's energy coming up that you can relate to. There's all different ways you can do it. So Your passion is a fuel for you to learn, and then also there's the words that it contains and the skills it contains that you can bring to the table and begin to use. So, really, a lot to think about there. A lot to think about. But that's a very different thing from simply coming to the table and saying, wow, Teacher Joseph, I'm bored, or I didn't do that essay. If you don't find it interesting, tell me. We can easily, turn to something that you are interested in. But an English lesson doesn't have to be dull or boring. And that, I think, is really something to keep in mind. Well, so just to summarize then, we really started talking about your passion and what you would like to be doing right now. So I do want you to get that bit of paper and just write down your passion and what that is and what that looks like in English. And the other thing, I want you to think about today is who you are is as an English speaker. Because as a teacher, I only see a little bit of you. You go from being that successful climber to being a man in an English class who says, my name is John. And that is quite a lower position. The big manager from the company comes to the English class and finds he can't speak. That's quite terrifying for him. Maybe it's quite terrifying for you as well. So these are all things for you to contemplate. So on that bit of paper, think about your passion, how you could bring that to English. But I also want you to think about who you are in your own language and culture and who you are when you're talking to me in English, because you'll probably find that the two things look very different. And I want to know more of you. I want to see the real you, not the little kid reaching for the jar in the kitchen that can't quite reach and needs help. So it's definitely something to think about there today. That's it from me. So enjoy your day, whatever you're doing, and let's catch up soon. See you. Bye.